Hello and welcome to the Cynic Weekly. It's Thursday, the 19th of March 2026. I am your host, Christopher Gallagher, and we are going to talk to you about Glasgow Celtic, the greatest football club of all time. We've got a great panel, plenty to talk about as well. Barry Gallagher's here. Hello, Barry, how are you, sir?
Very well, thanks. Enjoying the changing weather. The nights are fair drawn in. Is that the right thing? Is that the other way?
It's the other way.
They're drawn out, sorry. Oh, God. After a bad start. But no, I'm just happy that it's not pitch black on the way over here. So.
Great stuff. Boud here. Chris Boud, how are you?
Hello, yes, I'm good.
Can you put your mic down? Just
down?
Just put it down at there. We go.
All over the place here.
Oh, Jesus.
At my chin, that's when it needs to be.
It. Oh, we've all been there, Boud. Stuart, too much? Or?
I don't know.
I'm good. I did find out next week is when the clocks go forward, and I am working on Sunday morning, which is a fucking disgrace. I don't want any part of that.
1 hour less.
Yeah, no one really cares about. Stuart Diggins here. Stuart.
Hello. Everyone well?
We're all doing well.
Great.
We're excited.
Great, good, swell. I'm
Good.
excited to talk about it all.
Lovely. Maybe there's a part of me that's like, should we restart? But nah.
Give the people what they want.
We're going to keep on going. Right, we've got lots to talk about. There's some pretty big news that's happened this week since we last recorded that we'll certainly touch on. Kasper Schmeichel, some quotes from Shaun Maloney, Robbie Keane, other kind of points, some general news, some interesting news. We can talk about the St Mirren, the Motherwell victory, which was huge. Dundee United's coming up. We'll talk through it all. We might get to the squad contracts. Stuart,
I've been preparing all week.
Prepare next week as well, probably as well.
Stay ready.
Yep,
Go on a retainer.
That's it. Right, let's kind of start. I mean, the Casper Schmeichel news broke this week. It broke from him live on TV. I'll talk through the quotes in a moment, but the opening question: have Celtic been caught looking foolish with Kasper Schmeichel's public announcement of potential retirement? Just get your basic thoughts on it, Barry.
Yes and no. I think the whole thing's been bizarre the last couple of weeks when O'Neill said he'd been sick, and then he was training that day, and then a few hours later Casper came out and said he had a really bad injury, about for a while. But I kind of feel the nature of him as an individual, he seems, as we'll come on to, I think he seems a kind of self-focused and selfish, essentially. And I think throughout his career it's always kind of been about him. So in terms of Celtic, I don't really know how we could have kind of kept the reins on that. If he's out 2 nights in a row doing media work, Celtic can maybe have got in front of that, but it feels like this has been very much a Kasper Schmeichel move, all about him and the World Cup, etc. It is disappointing, I think, that we weren't able to do a in-house Celtic TV interview with him or whatever, because I think he owed that to the club. And some of the comments we'll come on to from kind of other ex-footballers kind of shows that that's the general consensus. But for once, I think I'll kind of defend the club here, and I feel that he just kind of seems like he's quite a hard character to tame. And I think you can see that on the pitch as well, the way he kind of lambasts players. And
you've been at some away games, and his reaction to certain things to the away fans hasn't been ideal.
Actually, so I know that the whole sort of tennis balls on the pitch, etc. But I remember the game in December at Tannadice, the one where we lost. Johnny Kenny missed all those sitters. There was he does that kind of clip ball out to the wing, and it went out, and there were obviously groans, and he was turning around and like giving a bit back to the fans. And obviously the fans were kind of baying for blood that night because of what was happening on the pitch. And I just thought, like, we've travelled here with work, sharp, travelled up to Dundee, and then to be treated like that. So I kind of feel he's the opposite of Joe Hart. I don't think he appreciates the opportunity he's been given to play for Celtic. I know he has spoke fondly of like the fans, etc., but it's never quite felt the same as Joe Hart. Ability-wise, I would say that maybe his impact last year was equal or maybe even surpassed what Joe Hart did in a Celtic jersey. But I've never really felt that connection with him that you had with Joe Hart. And yeah, this week just kind of sums him up for me.
Stuart, let's come to you. Your kind of thoughts. Just your thoughts.
So I don't think, to answer the question, I don't think that Celtic necessarily have been caught looking foolish, because I feel like they've not even entered the conversation.
Yeah.
And that's one of the problems, I suppose, that I would have with it. When it first was announced on, what would it have been, Tuesday night?
Tuesday, yeah.
I wasn't particularly vitriolic or pretty annoyed. I had a modicum of sympathy of him, because obviously it's sad in any situation, any walk of life, when a big decision like the end of your career is taken out your hands, whether that's, as a bus driver or as a professional footballer. That's a sad situation. It's a difficult situation, but I think that there are ways to deal with things, and I think there's been quite a lot with this whole bizarre saga that has been revealed about Casper Schmeichel's character. I think that to present yourself on CBS not once but twice in 2 consecutive days, to me just looks like someone that's trying to work their ticket for a job in the media before they've really dealt with any of the responsibilities that they have to their current employer. And I'm only looking at this literally with what's happened in the last couple of days. If you look at from last year, when it's that injuries first happened and he's come back for the cup final, and some of the decisions that he's made, some of the decisions the club have made, there is a lot of blood on a lot of hands. And these are the sort of decisions that might prove costly in a very close title race. There are a number of games and a number of really high profile goals where you can quite clearly see
Cost us Europe, really.
Yeah. I think we would have got there on our own, to be fair, but yes.
Can I get a cup final as well?
Very much so,
Came out
yeah.
for that
Yeah.
second goal.
And, these are all decisions where if he's talking about re-injuring it against Stuttgart and then playing
in the Hibs
a
game,
handful of days later against Hibs, that's a disgrace, because a manager can only really go off what he's been told by those people. And if the player is telling X, Y, and Z that he's fine and that he's ready to go, you kind of have to take him at his word, because he is a significant part of that dressing room. He's a senior player, he's very experienced, and chopping and changing your goalkeeper is not something you want to do. It's not a very normal thing to do. But it feels like whatever has happened, he's absolutely put himself first. And I think that there's just a bit of a lack of professionalism and a bit of a dereliction of duty, because if he is finished now, both with the club and maybe his career, I think he owes it to Celtic to try and pull them over the line in any way he can, and that might be coaching and helping and supporting a young, inexperienced goalkeeper who has supported him in his time at the club. And I think if you don't hear from him tomorrow morning and the first comment that has to be made on it is from Martin O'Neill, that's also a disgrace. And
yeah,
I suspect a lot of it is because maybe from an ego perspective, he's taken against some of that ill feeling from the fans. But the fans have every right to express themselves, and it's been a very turbulent time this whole season. Other players haven't rounded on fans, and I just think that it all kind of stinks a wee bit to me, and it's a shame because his contributions last season were very significant, and I think he has 2 choices now where he can either step up and be a sort of role model and try and lead by example to try and help in any way he can, or he's just going to leave under a cloud with quite a lot of ill feeling, and that would be a shame.
Yeah, Boud, before I come to you, I'm just going to read out the quotes. I could have potentially played my last game of football. I've been a footballer since the day I was born. It's devastating. It's very, very hard.
True. It's not true.
No.
He was a baby.
Who did he play for?
He was a baby.
Don't see that in Wikipedia.
I also have, you might come to it in the quotes, but I'm going to interject one more time. I don't need to think that I'm just doing it out of badness. I have something pertinent to add.
Okay, it's very, very hard to wrap my head around at the moment. I got the message on Tuesday that it could potentially be the end of my career. By the time I could get back, I could be 40 plus. I'm going to give it everything I can to see if I can get back. It would be probably one of the greatest feats of my career if I could ever get back for a manager like this. I'm going to fight. I'm going to try everything I can. I'm going to do the rehab. I'm going to need 2 surgeries now to fix my shoulder. I've torn the bicep, torn the rotator cuff, dislocated the shoulder, torn the labrum. Everything's gone. To maybe put it in terms that you can understand, you idiots.
This is where I'll interject, Chris, if you can finish the quote.
It's like an outfielder doing his ACL and the Achilles at the same time.
My wife's an orthopaedic surgeon, and she's like, that's an absolute nonsense. That's like gobbledygook that he's just said there, that all his injuries are just quite consistent with a serious shoulder injury because they're all connected, whereas he's trying to offer you a false economy, two completely different, extremely serious injuries for the lower limb. So that's an expert opinion.
To maybe put it into terms, this is how I've not seen the clip, but I imagine he did it like this. To put it into terms that you can understand.
Sounds like he needs to put it into terms that he can understand because he's got that wrong.
I've not seen the clip, but was he wearing his goalie gloves at the time?
he was doing shit, yeah.
Boud, how do you, obviously we can't predict the future, but how do you think this will go in terms of the next couple of days with Celtic? And do you think they should they be addressing this? Obviously they will, but should they be addressing it sooner rather than later?
It doesn't really matter, does it? We'll know. Who cares? To be honest, I'm just happy that, with all due respect, he isn't going to play for Celtic again, because clearly he wasn't performing, and as you've touched on already, there's an element of selfishness there. I mean, clearly he knows. But to be honest, people in the club shouldn't have been picking him for quite some time. That should have stopped quite a while ago. But as Stuart was saying, managers, coaches, physios are all relying on Schmeichel to tell them what's happening with his body and how he's feeling. So, it's a shame a man's lost his career. He's a 39-year-old multi-millionaire, nepo baby, trying to worm his nepotism into the media as well. Get a wee.
He was there with his dad, and his dad was like, this is my son, he should be on the thing as well. I'm sure the club will have a nice video montage of him and miss out all the bits where he messed up and ruined their season, but Aberdeen will have a wee montage for him as well.
There's a real false economy where...
It's your new favourite phrase, you've said it twice.
Have I?
Yeah.
What did I say at first?
You said false. He said it a while ago. So
if it was about his quote, that is a false economy.
Well, there you go.
It's not the same for him to bring out the wee fiddle that his career has rounded the corner at the age of 39. Has been taken in his hands. It is sad and it's disappointing, but it's not comparative to John Kennedy. It's not comparative to Micah Richards, for example, who spoke really eloquently about that last night. And I think there's something a bit weird about it. That
he's not mentioned Celtic once. He's not said Celtic.
Spiteful. That's how I would describe that.
Casper Schmeichel.
Casper Schmeichel. There you go. I like that a lot. That's good, Barry.
Write that down.
Take it up.
I just think that, I don't know, like there's a weird mental health thing where if you can't stop, if you can't be grateful for the career that you've had. I mean, being part of that Leicester side is one of the most historic sporting achievements in British history, at least, if not, European.
Played at Euros, World Cups.
All of that. He's had a right good kick of the ball, and he's let a fair few past as well. And I think he should be able to just walk away.
Also, what I would say is, right, he only found out like the day before, or a couple of days before, right?
So he says.
I got the message on Tuesday. Don't be on telly.
Yeah, Jenkins
telling I'm so sad. Dad, can you get me on CBS?
Rolls over. Just like, oh God, I've just got this terrible news. Better text Kate Abdo then. You get on the show tonight. You're like, what?
Yeah, go get the guitar. But it just, I think the whole thing's really odd. I don't like the fact he did mention Celtic. I'm really devastated for Celtic. We're in a title race. I've been playing in goals. No mention of the goalkeepers there. It's always about, what I've done in the past and all that. Here's some quotes from Chris Sutton. Chris Sutton said, "It's just like Celtic weren't in the equation with this as such. It just seems to me his desire to play at the World Cup. I may be wrong, but I didn't hear him mention Celtic once. There's clearly been something a bit wrong with him this season, whether it was age or mobility or whatever it is, it comes to us all. But I don't necessarily think a player should be putting their own ambitions above the team and the club. That's selfish, like it or not. I like him and I admire him, but that's just selfish behaviour really, and it hasn't served Celtic well this season. I suppose Schmeichel will think he's entitled to get it out there as he sees fit, but it just seemed to me that Celtic were secondary and have been secondary. I might be wrong and he'll explain himself, but it seems to me he's using Celtic for his own cause and playing when he's not 100%. Sums it up pretty well, Barry.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I don't like how he kept saying I may be wrong here. Just speak with conviction, Chris. He said it a few times, but he's spot on. sees that Celtic are an afterthought, or not even an afterthought, maybe just not considered at all.
Maybe we shouldn't have booed him.
Oh,
Is that right?
Aye, I'm a Casper fan. That's who I support.
You
on this.
support Casper, as opposed to
the Celtic FC. Yeah,
fair play.
yeah.
the boys.
It will be interesting to see if he does. Imagine he just never mentioned us ever again. There was no mention of him.
You might not.
Casper ghosts away.
Mm-hmm. Lovely.
Casper the Ghost.
Not the worst.
It's not the best either. Here's what Aidan McGeady had to say. My reaction was...
Saying a lot these days.
Yes. Saying more than his prayers.
I like it. I love Aidan McGeady. My
Till
reaction...
the Jota thing, sorry.
Aye, the Jota thing's a bit...
Not all of us can get on CBS because our dad's there, so has to make a bit of noise.
My dad worked with John McGeady before he became a teacher at Holyrood.
What was the Jota thing?
Remember he was saying it was a bit much Jota crying when he scored his goal back?
That's just a bit...
Live a little man.
Bloody toxic masculinity. My reaction was one of shock, to be honest, but a bit of sympathy as well, because it's never nice to potentially be staring at retirement, especially when it's not in your own terms. Casper, in his first season at Celtic, I think he was fantastic. He was getting a lot of plaudits and a lot of praise, and rightly so, except for the cup final.
Mm-hmm.
This season he's come in for some criticism, some just, some unjust, but there was a bit of a drop off in his performance. I think that was noticeable. I think probably what was on his mind was the potential of the World Cup, and his contract's up at the end of the season as well. But everyone involved in football has played with an injury. Everyone's done it. But it does make you think it's unfair in the club itself and the team, because you have a player playing with an injury for a long term, and it's making a marked adjustment on his performance, and it's very difficult. Celtic are in a different position to what they've been in previous seasons, but you're needing every player to be as close to 100% as you can get. You can't really be carrying any passengers, and essentially we've been told it's been happening this season, which is a shame. I wouldn't want that either, but maybe have a bit of a sour taste with some of the fans and potentially some of the staff as well, who might have been unaware of the extent of the injury he's had.
See, just on that, just kind of thinking while you were reading that, do you think there's maybe, even before the injury, or the club have told him there's absolutely no chance of him getting a new deal, and he's maybe taking the half that way as well?
Maybe. I mean, like, he's saying that he's going to be out for potentially like a year, right? And then he's talking about if I come back from this. So, I mean, I think there is a part of him, maybe he just hasn't dealt with the fact that he probably will have to retire. But there's probably an ambition there to play on, Boud.
Aye, I mean, he's approaching 40. He's defined himself as a football baller since coming out,
birth,
yep,
since conception,
right through the off, and you know that can be concerning.
Right from the off.
get into them.
Right from the off is such a weird way to describe
The imagery of that
right from the
comes
off.
out with the
Catches himself.
Hey.
But so he's got to figure out who he is and define himself, and I'd say that's very simple. Just have a bevy, Casper. Enjoy a wee bevy. You've got the money.
It's like he has, to be fair.
I'll read out the kind of final quote is from Stephen McGowan, who was on the BBC Scottish Football podcast.
Punting crypto.
That was great.
Too easy.
It would have been good if you had the full crypto ad. You were saying a 50%.
It's just, I think, well, see, there's a lot of stuff about the fact it's been such a sensitive situation. There's two sides to this, because Schmeichel's not been in good form for quite some time. We've seen some high profile mistakes. Go back to the Scottish Cup final when he threw one in against Aberdeen. It's been a series of mistakes as well. Didn't have a great performance against Rangers. The flip side, it's a shame for the player. So I think there are some supporters saying how long has this been evident for, and why has it not been detected sooner? Because if it had been, that might have made a difference to Celtic's season. They might not have been in quite the difficult situation they are now. If he doesn't, let ifs and buts and all that, but if he doesn't make that mistake against St Mirren, we might win that League Cup game.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. What does that do for Nancy if he wins that first trophy? All these kind of knock-on effects.
Maybe it's a good thing.
Yeah.
It'd be so
Thanks,
funny.
Casper.
It'd be so funny if Wilfred Nancy sued Casper Schmeichel.
Oh,
I'm not against it.
Not against it either.
Wilfred Nancy.
he's back.
Casper Schmeichel, though, right? Here's a question for you. As a kid, the question I kind of put to Boud: how do you think Celtic will approach this? Do you think it will just be Martin O'Neill saying in the press conference, Casper's not available, we'll look at it in the summer, or because he's at a contract in the summer? Like, how do you think Celtic will handle this?
First off, I think I agree with what Stuart was saying. Like, they've put O'Neill through the ringer this year in terms of him having to talk about club issues, and probably the last thing he wanted to do was have the whole preparation and the press conference tomorrow focused on a player that is now not available for him. So I feel for him that way. But I think O'Neill will probably just say, he'll probably address the comments, say we wish him well, and maybe expect to see him back. Like Stuart was saying, like he could be around the club because of his experience. And I think that was maybe, I think we spoke on here maybe 4 to 5 weeks ago, that it was maybe his influence as one of the part of that leadership group that you tend to get in football now that was keeping him in the team. And then for that to be taken away, that might be a loss in the dressing room. Like, he is a big character. I was going to say a big presence there, but
Hello.
Steady.
I just got that.
So, yeah, I think O'Neill will just kind of be the ultimate professional. But it's still the thing that does kind of not rankle with me, but makes me confused is that, was it 2 weekends ago when he said that Casper was training and he was okay, didn't he?
He did, aye.
And then Casper came out that night and said, no, I'm fucked.
I don't think it's a non-zero chance he'll pretty much hit it with that exact same comment.
See him back.
He's playing on Sunday.
I just think what I would say on it, right, is I think the question stems, about Celtic looking slightly daft by this coming out. I think that, right, but I also think if Celtic were, we don't have anyone with any sort of nous who's in charge at the club who's like, okay, clearly something's happening. Let's get ahead of that. Yeah. Let's get ahead of it. Like a Malcolm Tucker. I'm making a joke, but at the same time, someone who's actually spinning positively for the club.
So the chairman's probably not a million miles away from Malcolm Tucker.
Yeah, true.
but that's very true. But like the fact that this comes out, Celtic don't really say anything. I think Celtic should have been ahead of this because also, if he hasn't informed the club of this beforehand,
could be.
And if he hasn't, then I think the club should come out and say, basically, like, we've part ways with him and say, look, he didn't tell us this before, he withheld it, we wish him the best, but we're a little, it's disappointing.
See, just before the others come in, that's the kind of thing that O'Neill would probably do. Like, O'Neill could kind of make it jokey.
He's got nothing to lose, man.
Could make it quite jokey, so it was interesting to find that out on social media or whatever, but yeah, it just seems a bit daft, and you would hope tomorrow would tell us more, but like Boud, it's kind of done now. He's not going to be playing for us ever again, you would imagine, and then it's just a case of how do we move forward from this. But yeah,
maybe next year when he comes back.
Maybe with a manager.
Get a look at him, see if he can still go.
Sorry,
I was just going to say that I think the best case scenario is that he's the player that's there for press tomorrow, or that they can do something in the morning, so that O'Neill's not the first one to field that, and you have a modicum of control over the situation. And I think as well, you do have the positive that he's not playing. That is the biggest positive of all that we've not really said. But try and spin it in like a do it for him sort of thing. Use it as motivation. He's a big character in the dressing room, seemingly well liked from all accounts. Any kind of last bit of motivation that you can dredge from the situation, I think you should, because I'm sure there's players that would want to do that for a Callum McGregor or some of their other players that have been out injured for a long time, so try and maybe spin it that way. But my worry is they're not going to do that. They're going to be behind the 8 ball with it. O'Neill's going to mention it. There'll be a half-hearted weird statement over the weekend and it'll rumble on.
Yeah.
Trot out Stevie Woods before Martin O'Neill.
That's it. So Shaun Maloney, let's move on. Casper Schmeichel, we hardly knew ye, and what we did know of you, we didn't like. Maybe we did, who knows?
You were alright last season.
That's fine. Well, people say that. It cost us a cup final. I mean, the fact the fact of the matter is, if you actually look back at it, he was probably poor for longer than he was good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Sure.
I did say Sinisalo should have the cup games last season, so there you are, Gall.
Thank you.
Gall.
I'm not a seagull.
Gall. You could be.
We lost our
You
minds.
could be.
We have a bit. I think this season is just kind of just affected.
Feels like it's lasted 4 years.
Yeah, exactly. Right, okay, so Shaun Maloney did an interview with an outlet. There's some interesting quotes about...
CBS.
It's very good. I want to get your thoughts on these. So, he talked about his position as, obviously, he was like the loan manager, the manager who kind of did the loans and the pathways. So Maloney reiterated that he expects to return to his previous position as professional player pathway manager in the summer, whatever transpires. I gave
That's a pro. That's a pro. Take
Maybe a bit of a
lessons,
come
Casper.
down into it.
cold class. I gave Michael Nicholson and the board my word I would do the job this season and next, and I will stick to that. I wanted to take that time away from management. It hasn't worked out that way with everything that has happened, but I have really enjoyed being back out on the grass with the players and being involved in games again. The role that I took, managing the exits and the loans, didn't involve me being on the pitch. I was going to a lot of games, I was watching the younger players, I was visiting the players who are on loan at a more senior level. But at the moment, the plan is just to get back to that role as soon as this season is finished. As I say, I gave my word. Saying that from it's that I wouldn't go anywhere else for those 2 seasons, and I'll stick to that. I'm really enjoying being back at the club. I don't think the pro license is relatable. I've already done Hibs and Wigan while I have been doing the pro license. I will see what it looks like after the next 12 to 14 months, but I gave my word. Jesus, that's the 3rd time. To Michael on the board that I would do it for 2 years. At the moment, I'm okay. I'm really enjoying working with Martin. He gave his word, I'm led to believe.
He can't have a lot left.
That does Boud. It doesn't really sound like it sounds like this experience of the last couple of months has really whet his appetite to get back on the training pitch, and he doesn't really want to be in an office managing loans.
Maybe. Does he? He's given his word, Gall.
He has given his word, I will say that.
I think he's quite keen to get back to an office managing loans. Although, is he not kicking about, just travelling around watching all the loanies? That sounds a great laugh.
It sounds like a good laugh for us, but that's, But what do you think, Stu? Do you think he gave his word, to be fair?
Yeah, that's what I hear. He has. I think it's been a really good rehab period for Maloney, where I think,
absolutely,
in the eyes of, I don't think it'd be unfair to say in the eyes of Celtic fans, he was a bit of like a kind of nothingy figure, and certainly as a manager, his career hasn't really gone off in the way that he would have hoped it would. And I think that just by being there and taking a bit of responsibility of a very difficult situation, I think he's got a lot of people's respect. I think you'd have to be very careful about what his next move was. Certainly don't think he's going to be like the man to step up and be the manager next season.
No.
I think that all the chat about him, starting to look at recruitment and that sort of chat, and maybe like more director of football mode, I think that is just literally because there's not the infrastructure for that at the club just now, and someone has to do it. And I think,
could that lead into next season though, if we don't get...
Maybe, but Shaun Maloney's been part of the team that brought you like Joel Mvuka and players like that, so I'm not sure that it's necessarily...
I did say that, and I got quite criticised for it.
Did you?
Yeah, well, just like the fact that I think if you're going to sit and give the management team and everyone, their flowers for what they've done and how they've kind of pulled us back into this title race, absolutely. But I think if you're going to give Maloney credit for that, you also have to give him a little bit of criticism for the fact that the window was a fucking disaster. People will turn around and they'll say, well, it's how we do business and it's not really Maloney's thing, and maybe he had other targets. But, you take the rough with this move, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose the main context is that they were properly parachuted in. No start. And I suppose any prep or work he's doing just now is probably just to ensure that a new manager or a new recruitment team don't come in to just...
Trying to have some continuity, I think, for the summer, I think, is what they'll try and do. That's why I think he'll stay on.
Yeah, I would think that's not an unlikely scenario, and my worry, obviously, without thinking too far ahead to the summer, is with a managerial appointment. If they don't get that done in a timely fashion, I think it would be Maloney and Fozzie that they would rely on to take the team in those initial sort of fitness stages and stuff like that. So, who knows? I think who's looking after the loan players and all that is very, very, very low priority for us right now. But I think Maloney will probably be involved in the club in some capacity next season.
What do you think, Barry?
Yeah, I just think that I think Stu's right. Like, he has kind of rebuilt his reputation and a bit of credibility and stuff, but I kind of feel like he's had so much experience now that it would be a come down to go back to such a kind of
There's no way he wants to go back to that role.
No, but maybe he's hedging his bets that if we don't win the league, he's still getting an income next year. I think that because there was a talk, wasn't there, that he was helping Tisdale before he lost his job to recruit players as well. See how he said exits as well? Was that like first team players, like not just youth players? So I was involved in the loan and exits, he said.
It just says, the role that I took managing the exits and the loans.
Yeah, interesting. I just thought that terminology was
Just
weird.
quite odd. That's quite odd, yeah.
We're very good at exits, so maybe he's doing a brilliant job.
Yeah, I think I would like to see him involved in the club in some way, but not taking the team first day of pre-season, please.
Just him doing office space redundancy chats with him.
Maybe he sacked Tisdale.
There's a part of me...
Casper, what do you think your role here is at the club?
I would ask, what is it you do here? Bit of office space there. On the current dynamic, he says, Martin leads everything in terms of the structure of training day to day and the drills that we do. I would say the majority of that, about 60 to 70% of that, is driven by Gavin Strachan and Steve McManus.
Oh, sure.
The nearer we get to the game, I start to get more involved with Mark Fotheringham. I start to get more involved, and Mark Fotheringham does a lot of work without the ball. But we're all pretty aligned with Martin.
Vibes.
I worked with him when I was young, and there are clear fundamentals that Martin wants in his team. It's been really good refresher for me. There are some brilliant things that he wants from his team which remind us of how to win games. Maybe as a young coach you get over-focused on the complexities, but he has a really clear idea of how he wants to win games.
Let's get it in the mixer, boys.
That's it. He brings a real calmness to the team in all situations. We've found ourselves being in behind quite a few times. We've been really difficult games in Europe. Very, very kind of positive, and they are just pulling in all directions, trying to get things done. It must be really difficult because they've just been, as Stuart said, just parachuted into an almost unwinnable situation. But hey, they're giving it a good try.
I think you can't argue with that. They're doing fantastically well. When Martin O'Neill and Shaun Maloney's first stint after Rodgers, the club was in a bit of a state. They improved it dramatically. Comes in for a second style after Nancy, and to describe it as a bit of a state would be a huge understatement. And again, they've turned it round. We all know it's not perfect. You're right, you could level some criticism at them for the window, but again, I'd just be inclined to absolutely blame the board, because
I wouldn't blame them for it. But what I would say is, so what the worry I would have would be that if Shaun Maloney continues to in the summer, if they do a continuity thing where they say, well, can you just keep doing this for the next window? What's to say that the same thing doesn't happen in January? Because he was doing that role in January. So we got shite players in January. If he's still the guy, because either they don't treat him with the authority he deserves, or they don't listen to what his recommendations are, all that stuff. Someone new with more, I don't know, sway maybe could come in. I don't know. I don't want to be too critical of him. But the continuity idea of it, I think, is probably the longer we get without any announcement about new manager or anything, I think that's what's going to do. And the worry is that he maybe doesn't have the respect of the board when it comes to transfers, that they just lay it out for him. That's my fear.
possibly, but that's a board problem, not a Shaun Maloney problem.
Yeah, but it's all connected. Right, okay, so that's kind of been the sort of news in the last couple of days. Robbie Keane's team gets scudded, Stu, which was pretty funny. He then hit out with a comment about he insisted he has completed his most important task. Now, it's March, and his team are on top of the league on goal difference. My players are not at this top level yet, but they have improved a lot this season, and for me as a coach, this is my most important task, to make my players better. That's my job. Winning is also important, of course, but it gives me much more satisfaction to see my players improve and move up a level. This is a job of head coach, to find a way for his players to move up to a level they haven't been to before. So they were 4-0 up. Was it 4-0 up they were? Or
no, they were 2-0 up when they got beat 4-0.
It's okay. So yeah, quite a turnaround. We kind of talked about Robbie Keane recently last week. Does it feel like that result will affect anything, or do you think it'll be a case of if Desmond wants him, he gets him?
think that last part's probably more pertinent than any of the results, because I think it might have been when yourself and Christian were talking about it that in any other circumstance would Celtic be actively pursuing the Ferencváros and Hapoel Tel Aviv manager? Probably not. I think that he is, the quote-unquote favourite just now, but I do think that part of that has been a little bit of a temperature check to see how people feel about it, and I also think that the summer is just extremely unpredictable with the sort of World Cup and with this carousel of management change that you're going to see in the English Premier League. I think if Spurs were to get relegated, Spurs would be an excellent fit for him.
Spurs might get relegated as well.
Yeah, but they also maybe look like they've turned a corner, and so then I don't think that he would be able to get that. But I don't know. I'm trying not to get too hit up about who the next manager is going to be, because I just think that there's plenty to be getting concerned about at the moment, just with regards to the end of the season on the pitch. I think that there are some that are being shortlisted that clearly won't be in the running, just circumstantially.
Do you think they're working on it behind the scenes now?
I think they will be, but just not particularly hard in the way that I don't know, you're thinking about plans for a few weekends away, like, well, we'll go out there or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, it's very loose. You've not booked anything.
Nah. We'll meet up on the day.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, Boud, Robbie Keane.
Nobby Keane. That's what I've got to say about it.
Yep.
Zionism doesn't work.
Fair enough. Agreed. Yep. And I think, I just think he's a good fit. Take all the political aspect away. I just think he's a good fit as a football manager.
Robbie Keane.
These are all great.
No, I don't know. I see was it a couple of months ago, maybe before Christmas, when they kind of had the cameras on him at the side of the pitch and they were in the dressing room with him. Like, I just didn't buy what he was selling, kind of thing. And
see if someone say, and also he's saying there like, I'm all about developing players, and winning doesn't really matter. Now that's just a quote out of context, but come on,
fuck up. No, I think the point that Stu made, and as he said, you and Christian made, the only reason he's been considering is because of his name and because he'll be a pal of Desmond. I don't buy he's a big Celtic fan either. I didn't obviously I liked when we signed him on loan, and I thought he ended up being our player of the year for that year, didn't he, when he only played half a season. But I don't believe he genuinely is a Celtic fan.
When he signed for Liverpool, he was like pontificating about how Liverpool's the greatest football club and that's who he actually supports and all that.
Yeah, so no, I'd be really disappointed for a number of reasons if he was the manager come June.
I think the narrative might shift a bit depending on these qualifiers. If Craig Bellamy becomes available or more available than being,
you're a big Bellamy guy.
Yeah, but I'm not one to listen to about managers. I thought Nancy might have worked out, and I also thought Russell Martin probably had a go at Rangers. So don't ask me for the next 6 months. Don't ask me, basically.
Okay, no bother.
But I'm shutting it down.
There was a podcast out this week that had a Business of Sport podcast, and the reason I bring it up is because it's Charlie Stebbings and Charlie Methven. And Charlie Methven was the guy who was associated with Sunderland.
The fool from Sunderland till he wants to change the music.
That's right, all that shit, aye. But the reason I bring it up is because they've got a podcast called Business of Sport, and they're just talking about Celtic from a very no association, from a neutral point of view. And there's a couple of quotes that I think are quite interesting. So they were talking about how much Celtic are worth, right? And he was saying essentially, so he went through like some of the figures about how much Celtic have got in the bank and stuff. What that tells you is Celtic's native resource revenues, the ones that are not to do with TV, are massive. They are Premier League clubs that don't do a lot more revenue than let me say that again. There are Premier League clubs that don't do a lot more revenue because of the TV deal. If Celtic had the EPL deal and it then went into additional sponsorship, they would come off the back of being in the English Premier League. They'd be doing £350 to £400 million a year. So they'd be in the top echelon of England, absolute minimum. Then goes on to talk about like Dermot Desmond and talks about how he's got basically 34%, but because the shares are so diluted that 34% ends up becoming quite a huge percentage and controlling percentage. And then he gives Celtic fans their due in terms of why they're so right to be annoyed. Let's put it in context of the European status. They are unfortunate and they're not in a big European league, but their revenues are huge. If you look at Ajax and Benfica, they've got very good academies. They're buying and setting up players well, making sure that you've got global merchandise operations up and running. This is something that Celtic don't do. Then he kind of goes over the whole aspect of, could Celtic improve the stadium? Could Celtic... And then he describes the fact that Celtic, unlike a lot of other clubs in British cities, there's nothing around the stadium that doesn't stop them from building. Whereas a lot of, like, you know, when they were talking about expanding Everton Stadium and stuff like that, they couldn't because it's got like houses right round it and stuff like that. And he was basically saying, essentially, Celtic have got a huge opportunity. But the main quote I want to do is, he says, responsible stewardship says that if you have room to grow your business and you have available capital, which is currently earning 3% in on your deposit, you use that money to grow your business because you have a massive waiting list and because you have a huge diaspora of fans who, if you were able to get tickets at Parkhead, these guys, the massive numbers from Boston and Chicago, they would be going there if they could. And he just talks about how Celtic fans are right to be annoyed. And he talks about how Celtic aren't basically fundamentally using the brand in the right way. And it's all very brand heavy. It's all very like business heavy. But Barry, it's a neutral source. It's not Celtic fans. It's not anyone with any connection to Scottish football saying this is a huge club with huge potential and this board are sitting on their hands. And Celtic fans have the right to be annoyed. It's finally someone says it.
The first thing that came to mind was that fucking idiot from Sunderland gets it. Why do the people in charge not? I don't think there's much wrong with what he says there. I think we all agree that we are operating at a tiny aspect of our potential. There is so much that we could do better. But like you said, it's encouraging to see that they've obviously put the time in to research that stuff, because I don't imagine he knows much about Celtic. He's looked into that. He could see the potential that we would have, and the more voices in the media that are critical of the board, I think that kind of stuff hurts them, so it might have an impact. You're hoping it will. But yeah, just interesting to see kind of outside eyes and kind of reaffirming that what we already know to be true.
Boud, what he goes on to say that essentially clubs like Ajax and Benfica, they use the sort of idea of like having something to do something different, right? So if you look at like Benfica, they look at the Brazilian market and the South American market. If you look at Ajax, they look at the academy market and they look at, you know, developing young players. They've got a hook. Celtic don't have a hook. There's nothing that Celtic do that is exceptional or different. There's not. If you look at Celtic now, we don't have a style of play. We don't have a type of player that we develop or kind of move on or anything. There's nothing in place because the stewardship essentially are just happy to sit in their hands and let it all play out.
Yeah, absolutely. Asleep at the wheel, I believe you would say. But yeah, it's all very basic stuff that we know the stadium could be doing with some improvements. I seen there's a very interesting quote from them as well where they said, the tannoy system shit, get it fixed please, which I agree with 100%. I don't know about you gentlemen.
High mag.
Yep. But and as you say, I mean, how hard would it be to just talent scout some of these guys that are running great academies and again make that part of the Celtic way? Because we know we need to get players where we can. It's getting more and more difficult the more money there is in football. We all like the idea and have that history of having young Scottish players coming up. So why not invest in the academy and the stadium and start increasing your revenues by... I don't really want to get into all the capitalist shit about brand recognition, but it's there. It's there and it could be done.
But these are the guys who should be doing it. Like, we don't want to talk about that. We want to talk about the football, Stuart. And unfortunately, this season we've been talking about off-field stuff so much, which is obviously, the emergence of the Celtic Collective and fans really trying to make some changes happen. What is your confidence levels that we will see change in the forefront?
I think you'll see some sort of change, but I don't know that it's necessarily going to be the wholesale change that we want. And I think with regards to these sort of talking points that he's raising, the biggest issue you have is that there's a cultural resistance to it within the upper echelons of the club. I think the closest that we've had to it in terms of communication and some of the outward planning was from Don Mackay, and you saw how well that was received by Desmond and people there. So I think a real win in terms of change would be trying to find a slightly more progressive, forward-thinking voice at the top of the club, whether that's whoever the chairman ends up being, and probably removing some of the non-execs as well, just to get some fresh ideas and try and move some things forward in a more progressive way, even from a business perspective, let alone some of the more sort of draconian stances that they've taken with fans this season. I've noticed a bit of a slowing down in the wave of momentum that was building against change at board level, and I think partly it's because performances and results have become a bit more consistent and improved, and so I think that there's a difficult balance to be met where Celtic, all being well, will end the season successfully, but having gone through an unacceptable sort of path to get there, and really only getting there, getting dragged kicking and screaming over the line by Martin O'Neill and that management team. And that in itself is a very unique circumstance where I think there's a lot of, you could have put Roberto De Zerbi in that job, and I don't think he gets the same tune out of those players, because I don't think that they're good enough to play tactical, expansive football. I think Martin O'Neill has managed to thread the needle of getting these players to play the exact way they need to play to grind their way to this title. So it's going to be a very difficult balance. I think that all this resistance, like, you're entitled fans and blah, blah, blah. How can you be calling for change if Celtic go and win a double this year? And obviously we want to go and win a double this year. We don't want to have an unsuccessful season in order to enact the change. But it'll be interesting to keep an eye on all that and how it unfolds over the remaining weeks, because I do feel like the fervour for it from a wider support has definitely quailed a little.
I wonder what will happen if touch wood, that we do win the double. But Barry, I wonder, do you think we'll see more of a reaction to Celtic to negatively? Do you think there'll be more action if we don't win the double?
I think there will be, naturally, yeah. And as Stu said, it's finding that balance between, obviously you want to back the team, and we've had some big results. Obviously those 4 away games that we were all dreading came through that positively, and then we had the big win on Saturday. So that's maybe naturally taking a downward turn because all focus has been on that. But I think Stu's right, we have to keep our eyes on the prize. And yeah, but to answer your question, if things do go sour, then go south, I think things would ramp up. But ideally you want things to continue going that way. I think, right or wrongly, the protest with the balls on the pitch at the home game maybe rub people up the wrong way, but it doesn't detract from the shambles that this season's been. And I think it will be a case of, if we do win a double, we got away with one there, and now we have to force real change. And maybe naively, I think the club will probably recognise that themselves. There has been a wee bit of admission of we're not doing things right. Well, that's an understatement, but yeah, if things are to continue as they are, then this kind of wave of negativity and downward trajectory will rear its ugly head sooner rather than later again. So yeah, it has to be, draw a line under it, get the 2 trophies in the bag, and then have a complete sort of reboot as a football club.
Yeah, and for me, even just having some young-ish people on the board would help. Maybe
50-year-olds?
Yeah, 55, 60-year-olds would be ideal in a way. I just want, before we'll talk about the actual football itself, we'll look back at the Motherwell game and then we'll look ahead to the Dundee United game. But there's some quotes from, Willie Collum. He was on a Level Playing Field podcast, and he was talking about, referees in Scotland. It's painful at times. Often my wife will say to me, how would you feel if the head of refereeing was coming out and talking about your decisions? But sometimes I just wanted to explain that it's a mistake, Instead of where we are in the west of Scotland, where everybody thinks there's a big scandal or conspiracy behind the mistake, which I think is ridiculous. He was then asked if we will ever move on from the culture of conspiracy theories. Collum said, I'm not so sure. It's a good question. I think it drags us down. I think it's a scourge on us as a society as well. Why is that though? I just think that, again, it's kind of like that whole idea of let's have an actual conversation about why there has been bias against certain clubs. It's very easy to say, it's 2026, there isn't cheating anymore. John Beaton doesn't, support Rangers. He's, they deny all this stuff, right? And Tiny Wharton, he gave you the old funny handshake, but he was fine. It's like, well, no, you've literally seen pictures of Tiny Wharton giving a Mason's handshake to John Gregg, right? So you've got photographic imagery of that. Again, let's just have a conversation about it, Barry. And it just doesn't ever... Yeah.
This hasn't been dreamt up. There has, as you say, precedent for this. Hugh Dallas with his Pope joke email, etc. The guy McBride, George Cadetti's quote that you were mentioning on the pod during the week.
And his registration.
Yep.
John,
and then the whole,
course, yeah.
We did the Jim Parry. We did the whole
Doogie.
The Cynic Chronicles.
Lying to the Celtic manager, Celtic board.
Yeah, and even if as you mentioned, John Beaton, if VAR wasn't in place, we would have lost at Ibrox in the 2 each game, and there's a good chance we wouldn't have won on Saturday as well. So VAR has saved us there, and it makes me kind of laugh because Rangers were the ones who pushed for VAR, remember? They were the biggest driver behind it in the country, and now they don't like it because it's levelled the playing field slightly. So, yeah, as you say, this hasn't been dreamt up, this isn't conspiracy or the whole world's against Celtic, but we have physical proof that these things have happened to us as a football club, and it's not comparable with any other club in the country.
Boud, why should we just accept it? Why should we not? Why, as Barry says, if Willie Collum came out and said, look, there is, cultural sensitivities here because of what's happened in the past, which I understand, let's talk about it openly and be realistic. It's all come on, it's all conspiracy theories.
Yeah, you're paranoid. And that's it. Look, referees can make mistakes. We can all make mistakes. I mean, I don't, but everyone else can make mistakes. But see, when your mistakes all line up for one side and against the other, that's not just a mistake. It's a clear and obvious bias.
Yeah.
And you have it, and you've historically had it, and we all know what it's tied to in our society, which again, we all like to blame as, both sides. And, so yeah, it's a nonsense. As I say, he is the scourge in society.
Oh, interesting. Okay, there we are. Stu, your thoughts?
I think it's difficult to have that. I feel like they don't address the gutter level standards of refereeing when they talk about these things, and I would say that that's the thing that feeds conspiracy theories on all sides, because you can't really go on any. I know it's social media, and I know it's not really to be listened to or taken seriously, but I find it so baffling that the volume of Rangers fans who think there's a genuine pattern of assistance for Celtic when. And you just were able to rhyme off 5, 6, 7 very high profile, very famous instances of that being quite the opposite.
Willie Collum gave a penalty with his back to the incident at Celtic Park.
And I think on that though, Stu, if you as a Celtic fan had been used to just being given decisions even when they were wrong, and then that starts to improve and it starts to become a little bit more or less biased towards you, then you might be a little upset and think that the world's against you. You'd have to be delusional, but
and in some of the people that trot out stats of how many VAR overturned goals Rangers have had compared to the rest of the league, but why were the goals given in the first place?
That's
really what kind of screams from that. But you see it a lot from fans outside of like the Glasgow sides who are like, it's Old Firm teams that get all the decisions. And I think that ultimately there is just the standards are so low. And I was quite glad to hear it. Beaton was quite rightly called out for that Daisen Maeda incident, the penalty and the red card at the weekend, where by what metric is he waiting for that to go to VAR? And then when he watches it, why is it taking so long to happen? That's insane. Like, that should never be happening.
He watches it like 14 times or something.
Yeah, and it's,
rewind it back another 30 seconds, kind of.
yeah, it's as clear an error as you're likely to see. So it's alarming. I think that there needs to be like a massive overhaul because, as you rightly point out, what are you paying for? See, when you get like the lines for an offside decision on either side, and you can see that they're clearly feet away from where they're supposed to be. Like, who's that helping?
Sorry, I was just going to say, if he's really is passionate about this, Willie Collum, then he should be promoting and I've forgotten the word. What does
promoting's probably
what
fine.
does Paul Heyman do?
Advocating.
He should be advocating for miking up the referees, record it all, let us hear what they're saying, let us see what they're doing.
See, in terms of when you mentioned about Rangers fans when they're used to getting everything, it always reminds me of that quote: when you're accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression.
I was just looking that up as well.
That's a good one.
Yeah, very good. On the Cynic.co, we did a reaction straight after the Celtic game against Motherwell. Myself, Barry and Boud were there. That is available if you sign up to the Cynic, the Cynic.co, check out the website. If you go to the Cynic on Patreon, search for the Cynic on Patreon, we've done you get access to over 3,000 podcasts, lots of features, lots of news, lots of reactions, lots of fantastic stuff in there. So we're probably not going to touch on the Motherwell game because we've touched about enough this week. Stuart, actually, let's get your brief thoughts on it.
Just that it's really great, and I was really worried about it. I was bang the drum about how Celtic don't win games of consequence, and I feel like Motherwell have actually established themselves this season as a really big 3 points in a really difficult game. And obviously the way that the other results went with Hearts dropping points at Kilmarnock, it's massive in terms of the dynamic, but I think like both opposing teams would have looked at that and gone, they're going to drop points there, and that's kind of how I felt a wee bit as well. And the X's and O's in the second half, I know that the first half wasn't great, and I think we just maybe got it wrong tactically, where we just tried to sit off them a bit and just didn't really work. There were so much hunger and desire from individuals and like really hunting the team down, and I think it's the first time, such an odd thing to say, where I think I actually really like this Celtic team. I don't trust them. I haven't liked them a lot this season. They've been a really hard watch, but there's something really quite endearing about maybe knowing their limitations and not really letting that stand in their way. And you know, I was really critical about Yang last week, saying he was just an absolute non-entity at Ibrox, and I did say that, you know, you can't expect that from him every week, but to have rallied back the way he did is brilliant. And we're such a moments team, and I just quite like that it's being spread around the team enough that it might sustain generating some momentum. And yeah, just such a big 3 points, however you get it, but it was nice that it was a bit more positive by the end of the game and comfortable. Just
on that as well, I don't think we mentioned it on the reaction, but seeing the footage back when Big Tam scores a penalty, I loved Rio Hatate's reaction. Like, he just kind of looks to the sky and like falls backwards. And I think there is a togetherness now, and maybe that came from the night in Wonderbar after Ibrox.
Certainly where Arojo's calf strain came from.
Yeah. Yes. Arojo's down at Bournemouth now getting treatment. So we might be on with it. He might not be available. He might not be back.
We might be on with him.
We might be on with him.
He's with Casper now.
Yeah, he's with Casper. And as I say, we had a debrief of the game, tactical and stats, with our good friend Will. That was on Tuesday. We do that for every game. Agenda on Monday. If you want to get involved, check out thecynic.co. If you've got any questions, editor@thecynic.co. Send us an email and we'll talk you through it. Celtic play Dundee United on Sunday. We are currently second in the league, 2 points behind Hearts. Hearts have 63 points. We've got 61. Rangers have got 60. Games for Hearts this weekend. Hearts are playing Dundee at Tynecastle. Rangers are playing Aberdeen. 5:45 kickoff on Saturday. So they're both playing ahead of us. Boud, this game against Dundee United have been on an interesting run. Obviously, the Dundee derby did not go the way that they probably would have hoped, especially in the last couple of minutes. But how are you feeling about this game?
So, as we've said, we've came off a run of games that we thought could really just end the whole season, and we've came through them fantastically. But now we're going into a game where you think this should take care of itself. That's where the real danger is.
I've said that before. Yeah,
that's how Celtic like to fuck up. So, hopefully we'll get to see a performance and a few goals. But I think it'll be as nerve-wracking as any of them.
Is that how you feel, Stu? The fact that this is maybe the first one where you've thought, actually, we could do okay here?
Yeah, I like the team, but I don't trust them. And I think it would be folly to go in with any sort of sense of confidence that that it's not going to be hard fought, because I just think that this team will continue to go the long way round, but I still feel more positive about getting results. I think having come through so many difficult games, it would be sod's law that this is the one that you drop points in, but I would like to maybe see the difference that having just one game a week is going to make in terms of the physical energy levels, because I thought in the second half maybe it was, I think Scales actually mentioned it, knowing that they had a week before the next game, they really emptied the tank. And if you can just get a bit more pace and energy and aggression into that team, that's when the gap in quality should tell. So I think it's just important to win. It would be great to win by a couple of goals and start to feel a bit more comfortable and confident, but I think they're making a lot of this whole who plays last and pressure. I think Celtic have been under as much pressure as you're going to be this season, where any bad result you're far too far back, and the way that results have fallen for us means that you probably actually do have a little bit of leeway when it comes to games against Hearts, games against Rangers. You might be able to go into them and not have to win. You might be able to take a draw and you're denying them. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Barry, you're going to the game on Sunday. Looking forward to anything you want to see specifically from Celtic?
As Stu says, I would like a couple of goals, but if they could come early in the game, that would be nice as well. It has traditionally been a sort of happy hunting ground for us, famous last words. And obviously, I mentioned earlier the performance and the sort of atmosphere under Nancy just before Christmas. But I don't know if you saw the interview with Jim Goodwin after the game. He looked absolutely shell-shocked. That own goal was crazy, considering it was their captain, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He gave away the foul that led to the free kick. Just a bizarre turn of events. It's also funny that clip of the ball boy getting almost carted out. Did you see that? He thought it was a pitch invader, but it was I'm a ball boy. Yeah, but yeah, I think Stu's right. I think the fact that we've had a week, that's got to have a benefit. And I think the confidence from the Motherwell game will be really important to see. And I also think that Dundee United they don't tend to sit in against us, and a more open game probably suits us as well. And I think I mentioned last week on the weekly I wanted to see Big Tam score, albeit it was a penalty, and I don't think it was that great, but I think it would have done him the world of good, his confidence. So if he could start again and maybe get a goal, that'll just stand us in good stead for the run in. So looking forward to it, but apprehensive as always because of what this season has been about.
Do you know what's going to happen?
Probably concede and then win 2-1, goal in last minute.
Celtic win 3-0.
What?
No.
Hearts draw.
Okay.
Rangers draw.
Love that.
Take that all day long.
Celtic go joint top of the league. If we win 3-0, they'd still be ahead, I think. But I think going out, if that was to happen, which I think there's a chance of that. I think that Dundee are a difficult team to play against, and I think Aberdeen, I think they will give. I think they will. Aberdeen will set up against Rangers, new manager bounce and all that. So we're going to go into the international break, joint top of the league. You're welcome.
I think the whole international break afterwards is quite important, because if you come off a bad defeat, that'll be absolutely horrible to sit in. But who knows? It is so tight. I think all you can do is look after your own results. I saw that McInnes today was talking about Shankland and Devlin coming back into that team, which you think would probably strengthen them, but I think that a lot of
They think that's the golden bullet.
Cammy Devlin specifically was really playing on momentum, and I think that the nature of his injury, it'll be quite difficult to get him back up to the speed and intensity that he was playing with. And they've just looked. I watched the highlights of the game against Kilmarnock, and they were absolute dog meat. Like, they were so bad. And if you look at, you know, the mean over the season and what normally wins you the league and what doesn't, that Hearts team are nothing extraordinary. They're not like pushing. They've dropped a lot of points, and I feel like just the fixtures that are left to go, not only having to play Celtic and Rangers, but then having like your most bitter rivals in a derby, it's a lot to ask. So I feel much better about our chances, but you have to win these games that look like gimmies.
Absolutely. Great stuff. Listen, this has been a joy, as always. We'll be back next week. Just from a Cynic perspective, we had the agenda on Monday. On Tuesday, we had the debrief where we broke down the game against Motherwell. Wednesday, we had the Celtic Women's Football Show, which drops every week as well. Obviously, you're listening to the Cynic Weekly. Friday, we'll have the weekend update as we look ahead to the game against Dundee United. And on Sunday, we'll have the reaction straight after the game. And hopefully it'll be a positive one. Barry Gallagher, a joy as always. Be safe in Dundee, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you very much. I'm still in a wee bit of a high after my Kasper Schmeichel.
Very good. Chris Boud, a pleasure as always. We'll speak to you soon, sir.
Thank you. Hail.
Lovely. Stu, pleasure.
The pleasure is all mine, as a wise man once said.
Great stuff. From Stuart Duggan, from Chris Boud, from Barry Gallagher, from myself, Chris Gallagher, this has been the Cynic Weekly, and we'll speak to you down the road.